I'd say that selling starts right at the very beginning. When you're conceiving your product or your service, you need to engage with the market. And I'd rather you just took the sales word and binned it, actually, and said, I need to converse, I need to talk to my potential clients, I need to find out what they want, what keeps them awake at night. I need to know whether by developing that bauble or that aspect or that feature of my product, is that relevant? So the more engagement, conversations you can have with people in the industry is good, and you should be doing it from day one. So there shouldn't be a bit that says, now I'm ready with a product, now I go sell. I think you might find when you go out, you're selling something which almost fits and doesn't, and you might have to reverse engineer or restructure your entire product development, and you could save yourself a lot of time if you actually engage from the initial. When you're sitting down to decide who do I go and talk to first, right? So how do I, in other words, you're saying what's my business development plan? Forget the sales thing. It's a business development plan. Selling is just the ultimate outcome of a business development. There are many people. There are, the folks at SIE have lots of contacts. In Scotland, we have Scottish Enterprise. They have sectors specific, so you can go and talk to some people there and ask them who are the major players. Go to networking events. You have to engage. In the UK scenario, you have the technology strategy boards. They have knowledge transfer networks. These are bristling with people who will give you, very good indicators as to who would buy your product or service, and what does it mean to the industry? What value would they place on it? You can do so much from internet search. You can do so much from reading press, but you really have to talk to people who live and breathe the various industries. And there's another analogy, there's another image that I often use myself, is if you imagine a mill pond, pond of very still water, and you take your idea or your concept and you sort of throw your idea into that pond and you watch the ripples. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to go out there and create the ripples and interpret those ripples to see what do they mean? Is there a resonance? Did it just drop into the water and there was no ripple whatsoever? Well, I'd say that's a pretty sterile reaction to your product, and it's the one where you see the most activity and excitement about what you're saying. So get yourself out there. You should really, in the early stages, be thinking that you're almost 80%, I would say 80 to 90% out there talking to the players in the industry. You have to like talking to people. But if you're passionate about your business idea and you're passionate about the service that you're going to take to market, surely you want to know more about it and you want to know what resonates. When you don't know what your product or service is worth or what the reaction is going to be, don't go to your ultimate target client, the person that you ultimately want to be selling to. Try and find some advisors or people that know the industry well and go and test out your ideas with them. People will give you time to talk about your idea. And you don't have to, you can do it under NDA if you want to be safe. But talk to people that are in and around the industry or lesser players who will give you a frank understanding. But you're not kind of shooting your biggest bullet, if you like, by going to the big guy and not being properly prepared and knowing exactly, being pitch perfect. So that's how I would suggest that you prepare yourself for your market rollout. You're now into more of a selling. The selling activity is becoming more acute, because now you've done the homework and you want to know, are you going to get the contract? Because now you want to convert it into value for your company. And at that point, you really want to be still having as much of a dialogue. This selling activity is what human beings do best and most, is communicate with the individual. I think a failed selling experience would be where you come in and you talk at the individual. But that's your own fault. It failed because you didn't understand the process you were involved in. You talked to the person like they were a tree, and they were they were suddenly going to absorb everything you said, and they were going to, buy into what you have and sign the line. And that's a naive perception. Pitch implies I'm hyper prepared. I'm going to deliver a story or a kind of my vision of the world to you. I've got a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to subject you to this, and you're going to sign on the bottom line and give me a contract. Well, that's never really worked. That's never worked for me, and I don't think it really works for a lot of people. I would keep in this open dialogue mode. I would invite people to brainstorm as to whether your offering is relevant to their business, and I would keep a very open mind. If you think about preparing a PowerPoint presentation does, that means you're preempting. You've never spoken to the person. You don't know what their needs are. You don't know what keeps that particular individual inside that organization up at night. You don't know what the boulder, the rock under his pillow is, and you're preparing a presentation prior to entering into the room to talk to him or her, and you're making all kinds of assumptions. And if you're talking to a PowerPoint presentation, which that's what you're focusing on, you're not dialoguing with the individual, you're not picking up body signals, and you're trying to get through your presentation and subject him to it rather than actually having this dialogue. And you've maybe made assumptions which switch him off. The thing you have to avoid is saying, I can do that, we can do this, and shutting down the conversation. There are some very good rules of keep the questioning open. Ask open questions. Don't ask them a question where you can say yes, no. It's going to be a very short conversation. So go in and ask them to expound on what their role is and what the problems they're having, and then reinforce that. Tell them that yes, you understand that, and if you've understood properly, is this the problem that they're actually trying to deal with? Ask them how much that is worth to them in terms of the time and the effort and the success of them being a good employee or a good member of their organization. Then switch to asking them, how does that fit into the strategy, overall strategy of your company? So in other words, how strategic is the project you're concerned with to the success of your overall company? And again, ask them. People will love telling you this because it's the thing that gives them the most grief. It's the thing that keeps them up at night. It's the thing that just gives them a niggle, in their life. It makes their life uncomfortable. And they get a huge amount of kind of relief in explaining that to you. So you're almost having a therapeutic effect on them. But you're learning a lot. And again, summarize and say, so I've understood that for your organization, this project you've described is this. And if you had this kind of solution, that would help. Yes, that would help. And it's only when you get to that point that you then say, so if I've understood rightly, what you've told me is that your job is this, that you're trying to resolve that, and if you had this kind of solution, it would be really effective. And they're nodding and they're saying, yes, 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 and my God, do you know my problem? This is great. That you then say, so if a company came to you and answered this and did that and did the next thing, that would be a good partnership for you to build. Yeah. Well, then I think we can probably put something together. And you don't necessarily have to be saying, I want a contract. At that point, you can be saying, can we then have a meeting with the relevant people in your team to then put into place a co-development plan? Or can we have a follow-up meeting where we can discuss what we have to offer? The selling process has many steps, and it's not about going in, pitching, and coming out with a contract. One of the other things you have to establish through this conversation is, can this person sign off? Do they have budget? And are they the person who will sign off on the project? And even if you do go in and you haven't done your homework, you didn't know that this person is somewhere down the food chain in the organization, it might appear like a failure, but it's a good learning process. I bet next time you go in, or before you go to the meeting, you'll make sure that that person has budget and has sign off on what you're doing. And even if you've completely misjudged your homework or the information that you picked up, if you've completely misjudged that this person's needs were going to be what you thought, well, you learned something. You'll probably learn something from that. And all engagement, I would say all engagement with the industry that you're targeting can only benefit. And if it's not useful to you now, it may be useful to you in 6 months' time. But all good knowledge, all knowledge of talking to people who are active in the market you're in, is valuable knowledge.